Welcome to another week's analysis behind the news. I'm going to warn you right away to go and get a pencil and a paper. I'm going to put up a little sign here that you can read while I'm talking about it. You can jot this man's name down and Google him and go into Wikipedia and other places and look at and verify really what I have to say about this individual. His name is Konstantin Preobrazhensky. Now, Preobrazhensky is a former KGB, FSB agent who defected to the West. And he was posing as a journalist in Japan. He comes from the world of journalism, so he knows how the Russian KGB has used this area, the Fourth Estate, over the years to manipulate people. So if you want to take a look at that, and I'll keep holding it up for a while, but just to give you a couple of quotes from this gentleman, he said this: the methods of propaganda are managed by Directorate A of Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. The specialty of Directorate A is deceiving world public opinion and manipulating it. It has got a lot of experience over the decades of the Cold War. Russia Today, the television station, Russia Today, is only a part of the Russian industry of misinformation and manipulation created recently in the USA by Putin's KGB. So you see, he verifies what we've been trying to tell people for the last couple of weeks. But this is from the horse's mouth. And let me give you one more quote. Contrary to what many in the West believe, the FSB, that's the newly named KGB, is not equivalent to the CIA or the British Secret Service, British Secret Intelligence Services. It is a department of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. In his book, New Trojan Horse, Americans of Russian Descent, acknowledging that the original Communist Party of the Soviet Union did not survive the 1991 restructuring, but he claims that the FSB and the Communist Party share the same ideas. In other words, they just rolled over the KGB into the SFB, and it's always been communist. They were the enforcing arm, if you will, of the Communist Party internally and externally around the world. So I hope that kind of clears things up on Russia Today. It is a propaganda piece of the KGB, according to a man who was an agent for the Communist Party and the KGB as a journalist. He ought to know. Some other things that are very interesting in regard to Russia and the United States. Here is one from the Navy Times, for instance, United States Navy Times. Putin, Russia must support NATO Afghan mission. Now here is Putin getting up and saying that they have to support, Russia has to support the United States mission in Afghanistan. Now wait a minute. Doesn't that raise some questions in your mind as to why? Well, it says that Moscow has provided the United States and other NATO member states with air corridors and railway routes for carrying supplies to and from landlocked Afghanistan. Now, get that straight in your mind. Russia has allowed our planes to fly over Russia and use their railroad lines to supply our troops in Afghanistan. This has been going on all the time, and the American people knew nothing about it. He says that Putin, while Russia sees the alliance as a Cold War relic, in other words, NATO, and has been critical of some of its actions, it views NATO's efforts in Afghanistan as crucial for its own security interests, helping prevent instability from spreading into Soviet Central Asia. Goes on to say, quoting Putin, "We are interested in the situation there remaining under control, and we don't want our troops to fight on Afghanistan's border with Tajikistan. We need to help them stabilize the situation in Afghanistan, or we will have to do it ourselves. In other words, they're saying the United States is doing the work for Russia. Now, there may be another twist to this that you might want to think about. What happened to Russia when they went into Afghanistan? Well, what happened was they bled themselves economically. Ultimately, they had to pull out. And it helped supposedly bring about the so-called collapse of communism in Russia and around the world. Of course, none of these communist parties ever went away. None of these communists ever went away. There was only one communist that was ever executed for his crimes against humanity. All the rest of the communists stayed in government, most of them except for the very top in some of these countries. Their second and third in command just stepped up as Democrats instead of communists. But that's the situation. And maybe they want us to be bogged down in Afghanistan so it bleeds us economically as well. Just a thought. Here, for instance, is that Russia criticizes NATO, and this is from the Wall Street Journal, for 2014 pullout plan in Afghanistan. Russia's foreign minister criticized NATO's plan to withdraw its forces from Afghanistan by 2014, saying coalition troops should remain in the country until Afghan government forces are capable of ensuring security. In other words, we're doing their job for them again. Response: NATO Secretary General Anders Rasmussen responded to this criticism, saying that the withdrawal schedule had been agreed with the government in Kabul and that it was definitely not artificial. And he also urged Russia and China to help fund the post-2014 Afghan forces. So it's almost like we're allies now, isn't it, between Russia and NATO? Now, they may be a little critical of one another, but they are allowing us to fly over Russia, to use the railroad lines in Russia. They are urging that we remain in Afghanistan and that sort of thing. It's just crazy. It's a topsy-turvy world. NATO was put together to defend Western Europe from Russia. Today now it appears as though they're getting closer and closer together as allies, for Russia's purposes more than ours, believe me. Here is one out of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I was in Atlanta last week. It says American troops plan one last push in Afghanistan. They'll try to secure all approaches to Kabul in hopes of preventing any repeats of the prolonged, coordinated attack the Taliban carried out over the weekend. Let me reread that first part again. They'll try to secure all approaches to Kabul? How many years have we been in Afghanistan, and we still don't have the approaches to the main capital of Afghanistan secure? It makes you wonder what's really going on. I've had some conversations with individuals whose sons have been served in Afghanistan. They don't have much good to say about it as to what's going on over there from what their sons have told them. One last thing about Russia. This is from Novosti. Now, that's a Soviet-Russian news agency. Now, you're not reading about this in your papers here in the United States. Well, let me read you what Novosti has to say. Now, if you have high blood pressure, perhaps you should just switch this off right now and not pay any attention to what I'm going to say, because this one made my blood boil. A group of Russian military observers began on Sunday, this last Sunday, a 9-day inspection mission in the skies of the United States under the Open Skies Treaty. A group of Russian military observers began on Sunday a 9-day inspection mission in the skies of the United States. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, Russians Tupolev Tu-154 took off Sunday from the Travis Air Force Base located in California. Russia and U.S. experts on board the plane will monitor the implementation of agreements on the use of technical equipment for this observation. The Open Skies Treaty, signed in 1992 at the initiative of U.S. President George H.W. Bush, but actually it was started by Eisenhower, he originally proposed it, established a regime of unarmed aerial observation flights over the territories of its 34 signees to promote openness and transparency of military forces and activities. Now, you have to ask the question here. Aside from the fact that they're going to fly over our bases, there are no-fly zones for American aircraft in the United States because our bases are so secret. What about these overflights? Are these overflights going to be part of openness and transparency, but you and I can't fly over them, but the Russians can? Very serious questions here. If we want to provide for the defense of the American people, why are we allowing our adversary to fly over our military bases, taking pictures and everything else? Until next week, we'll see you then.